This week, we're going to offer some help for young horses that are going really well until something happens and they just get a little bit too out of control. So for one, it's one that spins and one that's really anxious, being near a bank where a cougar prowled. Hello, welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, a podcast helping people to understand their horses better, to provide solutions in a calm, connected way. I'm Jenny Langley.
And I'm Mark Langley.
I love the questions with the cougars. I get really excited about them. It's probably not very exciting for the people that have to live with cougars, but there's something about it. I can't wait to hear your answer on that one, Mark. But we'll start off first with the question that's come from Sue, who has a young mare who is doing really well. She's quite thoughtful and she's kind. She's only 4. Now they live out in the bush in Australia where there's lots of kangaroos. That's not really an issue. But if one pops out of a bush completely out of the blue, then this young mare will do a spin, caused by a fright, of course. Sue doesn't want to come off, understandably. So she's wondering what she needs to do to sort of go over the education with this young mare to try and help her not to spin. She says that she's quite quiet to handle. She does shut down and groundwork, but she's just wondering how to piece together where she should start with your training and the training videos.
Spook, 2 things about it, and one of the big keys are in the question, quite quiet and with groundwork and can shut down a bit. First problem lies there is wake up, process, go towards your thoughts, think. I'm not going to carry you, don't carry her in groundwork, don't carry her in the arena work with your riding, okay? Make sure she's thinking, probing, processing. She sounds like a horse that hides away a bit and then might get interrupted very quickly because she's zoning out. So watch for her zoning out gently and kind of interrupt her out of that state until she's always in a healthy, open, blinking, thinking, searching, sniffing mindset, okay? Don't let her in the quiet places where there's no kangaroos hopping out of bushes or wallabies hopping out of bushes. Make sure that, and also in the environment, throw a few distractions in there, put a few little random kind of, what was that? Geez, that bucket just rolled. I just kicked a bucket down there, or, I banged the flag on something and randomly. And so she's constantly thinking and processing and awake. Okay, second thing about spooky horses that suddenly do a big jump is you have to watch how you can get them to recover after a spook and what they go to after a spook, which means sometimes you have to throw in a spook in their education, and it could be in the ground first. So sometimes I see horses that I pop a flag on my leg. I'll give you an example of it, like what I do in a lesson at a clinic is I pop my flag on the leg and the horse goes, geez, pulls, runs backwards, rears up, and I go, wow. And I say to the owner, do you really ride that horse? Imagine if someone else had a flag or a kangaroo had a flag, like, geez, you'd really have trouble steering that horse out of trouble when you're on it. And they say, yeah, well, sometimes I do, and I have to get off. And I'm like, well, the recovery in that horse after a spook is it doesn't trust feel either. So you can't get it in a hurry and say, let's come out of that big spin or come out. And I know sometimes a horse jumps so quick it's hard to pick up a rein. But believe me, if you can sort of throw a little spook in and then get the horse to recover quickly and find that they softened, and get them used to little exploding boxes happening in their environment, then they're more prepared for an exploding box. And then when it happens, the amount that they jump is a lot less, and the recovery is so much better because you've helped them lead out of trouble. Every time they've found trouble, you've helped them lead out of trouble through the rein. And that's what I say is, when I guide a horse, so I might, say I'll go back to the learning scenario. I pop a flag on my leg, horse spooks, and then I pick up the rope and lead it a little bit, okay? And then I do it again. The horse spooks, I lead a little bit until the horse goes, I'm used to leading when I get a little frightened, and that lead leads me to a good feeling. It changes my thought a bit, it softens me, and I feel good after following that rope, and that rope becomes the rein, okay? So basically, the other thing is you do is, when you're under saddle, you've got to be able to take a rein and put the horse all the common tight binds, like a hindquarter heel bind, where they can loosen up, move their hips around softly. So there shouldn't be any trouble in the reins on your young horse. So you should be bending the horse all the way around, almost like it looks like lateral flexion, but the horse is softly moving its front feet and its back feet and rolling around in that reins softly and not feeling trapped. If there's any areas that the horse is feeling trapped in the reins, then basically it becomes a double whammy where horse spooks, you grab the rein and it kind of braces up and it gets frightened then. So then it gets frightened to spooking because it knows you're going to grab the rein, but the rein always makes it feel trapped. But if the rein guided into a good feeling, then basically what's going to happen is the horse knows that there's something, a field to follow that's going to help it, lead into a safe feeling. Okay, just like a horse sees something in a paddock, and then now the horse goes, oh, well, let's go over here, and the horse goes, well, good idea, I'll follow you. That sounds good. So the good idea comes through the rein and the direction that you give that horse through the rein.
So she can do the sort of the exploding boxes exercises. She can do that on the ground safely.
She can do that on the ground safely and just see how her horse recovers after random spooks. If it's poor, then she knows that's what's happening under saddle, and then she can keep doing that until the horse gets better at it.
Okay, and so what videos can she follow on the online videos?
Basically, any of the ones where I'm, pop a flag, get a horse to come towards the field. Sometimes they're the ones that come towards a flag, but just remember, everybody, it's not to follow the flag, it's to follow the rope and know that there's something scary happening, but they can trust the rope. So a lot of those leading lessons that are just, basically leading with a flag, things like that. You'll see the horses push back a little, search into the pressure, and then come forward. The other thing I'd really look into is any of the young horse starting videos, like riding Fern, the hindquarter yields, bending that horse and getting to relax and move around in the reins softly. They're so important because, half the horses I'm working at clinics, I pick up too much rein in a bit of a hurry. Well, it's not too much rein in my, I don't think it's too much rein, but to them, they think that's too much rein and that's too fast, and I'm really frightened. And so the other thing also I want you to think about, which I better not miss before we go on to another question, is you have to expose your horse to variable rein speeds and like leading speeds. So some people, I see them and I say, you're in a real rhythm with your horse, aren't you? If you get out of rhythm, your horse gets worried. And I watch people and they have this rhythm. I always pick up the rope in this speed. I always lead like this. I always do my turn like this, and I always cue like this. And the horse gets used to that repetition. When the kangaroo jumps out, the horse jumps. All of a sudden, we're pulling the rein in a hurry, and we're going, oh, no. And then the horse goes, no, because there's too many things that are out of whack. So basically, on our young horses, it's essential that we start to teach them to lead faster. So I was explaining to someone the other day about feel and following a feel of a rope. So our responsibility is direction and speed. The horse's responsibility is pressure. What I mean by that is when you pick up a feel of a rope softly, it's not picking it up softly, it's picking it up slowly. So there we're still holding it softly, but we hold the rope, and the slower you pick up makes it seem like we're picking up softly. So people think, oh, you just picked up the rope softly. And I'm like, well, no, I just picked it up slowly. You just pick it up faster than I do. So that's slowly. If I pick up the rope fast, people go, that's hard. And I go, no, I just picked it up and directed it fast. The hardness is in the horse's lag and timing to follow that feel. So I think we have to look at it as, can we pick up the rein a little faster and faster and faster later on? Build them. You're not going to do it straight away, but build them that you can pick up a rein in a hurry and they're on time with it and they're not lagging and going, oh, no, I'm frightened. So rein speed and direction is so good for young horses, but we have to, really be able to interrupt them in a bit of a hurry until we can turn them really fast with the rein and they're happy to follow that.
And what about long reining? Is that something that could help? I'm just thinking with sort of just her being able to process all sorts of different things.
Long reining is great. The reason it is, like the long reining I do is more sort of to build awareness of a full body hug of the rein. So I do it to almost get the horse moving inside the reins like shafts of a cart, where they know where their boundaries are and moving around. But it teaches them to notice things all around their body, move and feel, and it's almost like a jiu-jitsu lesson where you're putting them in binds and they're kind of constantly working their way into the path of least resistance all the time until there's not any position that you haven't been seen done with your horse that they haven't softly found the path of least resistance, and it takes the trouble out of them, gets them good for loading in floats, all sorts of things. So in the sense of spooking, it gets them used to things coming from all angles, us being on all angles. So if we get a bit out of sorts or anything. And the other thing also when you're riding is ride out of sorts. Something you've got to really rock in the saddle and look like you sort of can't ride very much. And, on young horses in particular, you've got to be all over them sort of, like a really poor rider. So they get used to when you sort of actually are in a bad position and you're hanging off one side. But the long reining is good because you're walking and you're putting yourself in so many positions around those horses and feel and pressure coming from so many angles that it really immerses them in the whole thing and gets them really comfortable.
I haven't actually seen horses zone out in the long reins ever. There is one scenario where they are consistently tapping into what's happening and being aware of what's happening. It is an interesting exercise to do because it really does create a very good mindset for learning.
Yeah, but I think the thing with long reining is a horse will zone out. Some people go, I long rein my horse, and I look at it and I go, yep, you're just walking up there going turn. I said, so the long reining that they can't zone out is the one where you got them thinking all the time, moving, manipulating, and not just walking around the arena with, 2 long reins on them. But the manipulating long reining is really, really good for them.
Now, Tyler, who is in Canada, Alberta, Canada, ranch country, he says, I would love to see it. I'm excited already. His mare's 5 and was a wild horse. He has started training her since she was a yearling, and she will be his last horse, and then he's going to give her away to a young rider. So he wants to get her right, and at the moment she's going really, really well in a whole load of areas. He's super happy, except for one, and this is where he needs your help. So at the moment he doesn't have a round pen or an arena. He just rides out on a few hundred acres, past the riverbank, out into pasture, and he says that's where we learn about each other. How fantastic. Now, he reckons that at the moment she's doing super well for her age. He's got her to do all the basics, so she can side pass, she can do yields, she can do walk, really, really slow walk, she can do trot canter, trailers, obstacles, low jumps, she crosses water, and she even jumps onto the flatbed trailer. She's great with moving cattle. She took that no problem at all. She got her head down and was a regular cow pony right amongst them. So she leaves home, no problem. He's always sort of riding in a way where he has contact with her in the sense that, she's listening to his legs, she's listening to his mouth, all of that. So it doesn't sound like she's getting huge, long thoughts. She goes fine in a hackamore, side-pull, snaffle, or a curb. The problem is that when they go down to the river, quite recently, there's been an unknown predator, and the horse has got a scare from it, quite possibly a cougar. Now, the herd horses are more mature. Perhaps they've had that experience before, but they've always lived there, and they are now settled again. But this particular mare, this young mare who's come from the wild, is really struggling with being anywhere near that bank. So she'll follow his seat, his hands, his voice, and his legs so well that she never gets out of control. She's super alert and she's super wary. Now, when they get to that bank, what he normally does is to stop, they'll back up a little bit, and then they'll walk forward again until they eventually get past that scary part. Now, for Tyler, who's obviously a fantastic rider and trainer, he can do that. It's not a big deal for him. But what he wants to do is get this mare to a point where you don't have to go through that, so that she's right for a young rider. She's wondering if you can give some help, and she says, Mark, keep up the exemplary work.
Thank you very much. So I was thinking about this just then. I was thinking, imagine if we exported kangaroos to Canada and they exported cougars over here.
Oh, yeah, no, I think I'll keep the kangaroos, thanks.
And because the horses over there are used to kind of predatorial animals, and then all of a sudden when they see a kangaroo that bounces and they think it's a predator, that would really throw them out, wouldn't it? Whereas over here, they're not used to predator animals. They're just used to ones that move randomly.
Yeah.
But anyway, just I just sort of thinking about that, and but it sounds like you got nice control and feel over your horse, and that's good. Just looking at the age of the horse and how much it's doing, and there's an area you might want, the horse might need a little bit more space. Now, sometimes space is not a good thing for some horses. Sometimes it's it's too much, space, and they need us to interrupt them a little bit. But what I want to talk about is, like as someone says to me, like at a clinic, it might be a lesson where I'm sitting there and I'm guiding them so their horse can take them to the end of the arena, but the horse really doesn't want to go to the end of the arena. And you can see them after, 10 minutes, they're starting to got like steams coming out of their ears, and they're feeling like they want to kick their horse, but, I'm not letting them get to the end of the arena. And I'm like, well, I said, what's wrong? I said, what is there, a cocktail bar at the end of the arena? And they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, I don't care where I sit on a horse. As long as the horse feels good underneath me, I could just imagine that I'm near a big river in Canada somewhere and, ride in an arena and just imagine I'm over there. Where I'm going with this is then I say to them, I said, you know what? I know you can take your horse over to the end of the arena. I know you can. Just like you can take your horse past those scary things, or past the area where it thought the predator was and where it's frightened. And you can sort of have it fairly good listening, and maybe get it through it. But the tension that it goes through there, you're not happy with, and you want to go through a process and be softer about it. Okay? And like I say to the person, I say, well, you can ride that horse to the end of the arena, so can I. Big deal. That horse has been ridden to the end of the arena 50,000 times and it still won't take us to the end of the arena. Why is that? Why does that horse not take us there? Why can't it take us there? I want the horse to take us there, not necessarily us kind of manipulate it to get to where it's frightened or through where it's frightened. So the couple of things I want you to think about, and it goes in line with any horse that gets strong thoughts, whether it be a destinator that's marching back to the yards, or a paranoid horse that starts to, or anxious horse that starts to kind of go, oh, the cougar's out there, it's going to kill me, it's going to kill me, it's going to kill me. Okay, so when you interrupt your horse, don't do a lot of like, let's go sideways, let's do this. Sometimes that might be, I'll explain. When I interrupt a horse, I pick up one question and say, listen to this until the horse lets go of what it was thinking about, whether that be home or the worry that a cougar might pop up. So, and that backup might mean that the horse comes back, lets go of that thought, and then we stand on a loose rein and go, now just process that. You just let go of that worry that something that wasn't there was going to get you, and you let go of that thought, and we're still standing here and we're alive and we're standing quietly, and it processes, and then let it look around. If you interrupt them too much with lots of little exercises, might be a leg yield or a back up or a leg yield and step over and all this sort of stuff, sometimes you're not quite interrupting the train of thought enough, but you're putting enough white noise on the horse that it feels that it can't process the environment that it's worried about. So sometimes they just stay anxious, and we kind of got them in our hands and legs, but they're still anxious. Whereas, so if the horse has to process the environment that it's scared of, it needs time to look, process, and not have any noise around it, moving it, guiding it, and things like that, and to think about that environment a little bit. And then once they've thought about that environment a little bit, then you take them away a little bit. It might only be 10 metres you take them away, and then you turn around again. Look, we've always got an exit to this creek bank or this river. Sorry. If it was in Australia, it'd be a dry riverbed, but over in Alberta, you've probably got this big flowing river that there was plenty of water. But anyway, so then you turn your horse around again and you go, look, you just processed that environment. We didn't die. We walked away from it, and now let's try again and come back to that environment. So the biggest thing is when you're guiding a horse into a really worrying environment that to them feels like it's a life or death situation, the back door has to be open all the time. And we have to be the ones that take them through the back door, not them get right into the thick of it and then go, I've got to get out of here. So we constantly take them in and then back out of that environment. But the biggest thing, like I said, what we need to do is whatever we do has to be clear enough to say, stop thinking about that, stop hyper-focusing, reset, thank you, center, breathe, now let's leave, and then come back again. But if you offer like lots of little kind of distractions, you're actually crowding that horse's ability sometimes to process that whole environment. And you get them through, but they always go through and thinking too much noise. It's like having someone breathing over your shoulder when you need to just have some time to think. So you almost need someone to take you by the hand and say, stop thinking about it. Now, then they let your hand go. Now, go and have another look. Okay, that's the scenario I want you to set up in your horse. Very clear interruption, very clear space to process, very clear opportunity to move away from that environment that you've taken them away to safety. And as I said on podcast sometime before, I've talked to people who are care workers that go into people's houses. Some might have drug abuse problems or mental health issues, and they can be quite aggressive or spontaneous. They might have like some schizophrenic traits and stuff like that. Well, those people have the car outside and the door open, or not the door open, but they're always sitting near the door when they're dealing with that patient, because they cannot be in a corner of the room where they're blocked or trapped. So, and that's for the safety of them in case something happens. So with horses, you always show them that there's a place that they can retreat before you take them into the scary environment.
That makes sense. So you're setting them up to have a bit more confidence in you as your leadership. I do have a bit of a sideball question, and you may sort of just flatten it quite quickly, which is fair enough because that's what training does. But it's just about that particular mare. What if she, in the herd and her wild herd, what if her instincts are particularly heightened to be aware of predators? Because in the herd, it would be her that goes, we've got to go. And she's the first one that signals it because she is just so much more aware of predators than all the other horses. That's her job.
Yep.
So, what if she's like that? Is it, and maybe that cougar, she can still smell him more than the other horses, and so she's really aware of it still.
Yep.
Is it a conflict, or is it?
It is a conflict. So like what our wild horses or horses in the wild go through over here is different to what the horses in I believe America go through. Because you've got the grizzly bears and you've got all that sort of thing, and they can be a big threat to foals and horses and things like that. And so over there's probably a lot of very vigilant horses that are the lookout watch horses that tend to do that more than the others. And it's really hard for them to let go of what's naturally ingrained in them. And it's important that we allow them to have and process those things. But then, like any horse in the wild, they process threat and then they let go of it. It doesn't matter how vigilant a horse is. Horses always will seek safety. They always will find comfort somewhere, and they always let go and have time to rest and not be on full alert. And I think what you're trying to do is give her the right to process the environment, let her have that wild instinct that she needs, and then take her away from that and through good training and thought interrupt that process, and then let her go into a state of rest. It might only be 10 metres away from where she started to spark up a little bit, but it's enough for her to go, reset. I've done something about it. And it's when, like I said, the white noise, they feel like they can't do anything about it, so they get more worried. It's when you allow them to do it and then let go of it and then rest.
Okay. So because she's actively involved in feeling, yes, I've done something, I've taken the herd away, I've done my job, in a sense, perhaps, I don't know, we can't sort of put thoughts into her head, but that's the theory behind it. Yeah. Okay.
And I think all horses, like I'll liken it to zebras, I mean, you've spent more time than I have in Africa, so my African experience is like David Attenborough and all those sorts of shows. But what I see is these documentaries on lions that aren't hungry going to water right past the zebras and things like that, and I'm like, wow, that's really cool that big predator can just slink right past them and they're okay with it. But then there's times when those lions are hungry and they're on the hunt, and that's when the zebras are going to be more on high alert. And I think in horses, like, really the reality is the cougar's not a threat if it was a cougar anymore. But your horse it still was in captivity from young, so really it's not got to live out the whole experience of, oh wow, there's a real big threat, and then the threat disappeared or we moved away from the threat or whatever. So maybe it just thinks about it, but it hasn't actually processed it by doing something. But basically they know when the threats are higher versus that when the threat is lower, and they're clever enough and they're aware enough to analyze, when they should or shouldn't be doing something. Don't waste energy if you don't need to. Okay. don't do that. So it's I think horses have that same ability, but it's very hard to get that. The reason I love horses is because they have all these cool things about them, and why would we want to turn them into robots? Because a good horse will keep you safe. And when I was in Scotland, there was this horse that if they didn't follow that horse, they could sink in the peat bog, because it knew just by sniffing the ground and where it was. And you didn't know where the peat was because it just all looked the same to me. I'm like, well, it looks all right to me. I wouldn't go there. But then this horse would lead them through this boggy bit that I wouldn't have ridden through, but no one sunk. And the horse that went on the track that looked like the good bit sunk right down to its stifles. And I'm like, wow, well, I wouldn't have picked that. But everyone followed that horse because its instinct kept them safe. So it's an instinct in a horse and an awareness that keeps, when you really put them to work, keeps us safe, and it's something that the machine can't offer us.
Love it. Thanks, Mark. Great answers. Thanks, Tyler, for your question over in Canada, and also to Sue for your question up in Queensland in Australia. Great to have them, and great to expand our knowledge. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, everybody.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please like it, share it, or send us a comment. It all helps in reaching new ears and helping more horses. And if making a change in your horse appeals to you, Mark offers his direct support and a diverse learning platform. Head to marklangley.com.au and grab your 7-day free trial.